Hi everyone. I just had a 10-minute tangent about feminism and male gaze theory in my first take, and then my card ran out of storage. So I think I'm not going to talk about that this time. I'll just upload the tangent and put it in my bleep post playlist because I said some interesting stuff about trying to figure out what is male gaze theory, what's the relevance to manga and mainstream superhero comics. And I guess that whole 10-minute tangent could be summarized as male gaze theory is important. There seems to be a division between how most, the lay people, the average feminist uses the term male gaze theory, where they seem to mean fan service by that, and the way that writers and academic feminists, really serious radical feminists use the term, where anything could be male gaze theory. And I think the point I was trying to get at is that we need to talk about male gaze theory in relation to comics, because I think that's the big giant idea from feminism that's coloring all of our discussions, including the Hawkeye Initiative. All right, bye tangent. Go watch the tangent video if you want to hear me bloviate about that. Let's actually talk about this comic, which I really dug. I semi-dug it. I didn't know that this was a thing, and I enjoy it. I like the motif of a character who draws or uses his imagination as his power, and there has to be obviously some kind of limit on that to keep them from being godlike. This is obviously courting, so this kid's superhero name is Kid Kaiju, right? Japanese monster. This is courting fans of anime and Japanese monster movies, and it's fun. Big monsters fighting big robots and dragons and Tyrannosaurus Rexes. Yes, this is a fun comic. I'm mostly digging the art. I have a few things to throw shade on. I guess the one general note I'd make is if you're going to court kind of the Japanese audience, if you're ever going to have a manga influenced artist, I think this would be the comic to have him on. And I'm a little hesitant to say that because I've critiqued what I call faux manga styles, where you're just arbitrarily trying to make your work look like manga art and not naturally drawing that way. But I don't know. Get a legacy. If Marvel cared about getting really good big name artists, go get a big name Japanese robo mech artist to draw an issue of this for you. And that's the problem, though. Does Marvel care about getting big name artists, or do they care about just scraping by with cheap talent? I think the artist here is Andrea Brocardo, and I enjoyed most of it, but I did find some things that are worth discussing. I think the first thing is there are moments where the characters seem to have a bit of a vacant expression, and a real life person can have a vacant expression. You're just kind of like your eyes are half closed, you're looking a little sleepy, your thoughts aren't all there, and people can tell just by looking at your face. But in drawing, characters can look vacant even if they're yelling and screaming, and I think it has something to do with how you construct your faces and maybe the consistency of the faces. So it's hard to nail down. Like, I've drawn on comics before, and I wouldn't draw on this one because I respect it enough not to. I see drawing on a comic as my way of saying, I do not think this comic was ready to be sold or ready to be printed. But if I had like a really fine red line, if I was an editor at Marvel Comics, I could probably, construct a skull and then point out weird things like his nose really lengthening down here. So it's a tangent. That's an official tangent because his nose, he isn't bowing his head quite enough that his nose covers his mouth. He's not lifting his head enough that his nose is separate from his mouth. They're kind of running into each other. These two faces. So she's looking surprised, but there's a little wonkiness to her face. He's looking surprised, but this is the hardest thing I've tried to talk about because they're okay faces, but I can't put in words what's wrong with them without drawing it. So maybe that actually does need to be its own video where I try to identify what is a vacant face, even if you're doing, what you're supposed to do to have a surprised expression. Surprised eyes, open mouth. I love these, robots and giant monsters, and they're doing a fun thing where, one possibility is he's summoning them from other dimensions where they lived, and the other possibility is he's creating them ex nihilo. So does he have kind of like this creepy power to create life out of nothing, or is he just transporting them from another world? And the characters are wondering about this and discussing it. And then this 2-page spread. Okay, I gotta show that. So, they, this sort of Evangelion-inspired robot says, that must mean somebody needs a beatdown. Look at this. Yes, I want big 2-page spreads. They go right from talking to this weird alternate version of Fin Fang Foom blasting, and 5 robots and monsters at once all smashing stuff, and some the dialogue is building the idea of this Fin Fang Foom being a real dangerous dude that they can't really handle. Wow, great 2-page spread. So that's the money shot in this book. And then here's some more vacant expressions. So I don't know, it seems to be strong at doing these weird, crazy robots and monsters, and not so strong at this. These 2 faces look like a completely different kid, and even just changing the angle from a lower view looking up straight on to a side view wouldn't explain such a difference in this facial structure. This is about a 20-year-old boy. This is about a 12-year-old boy. And here's her vacant, kind of looking up, whoa, face again. And I don't think it's the expression, I think it's the structure. It has something to do with where the eyes and mouth are placed on the head that are leading to this weird effect. And it's manga-ish. It's not faux manga because it's not just giving them big, pretty eyelashes for no reason, but you can see a little manga influence in these expressions and faces. But I don't know. It doesn't quite evoke. It neither evokes good manga, nor does it evoke the rest of kind of Marvel superhero comics. It's floating in this uneasy area in between. Okay, I want to skip a little bit. So more robot battles. What's the girl's name? She reminds me of Yoko from Gurren Lagann. Elsa Bloodstone. So the reason I started thinking about male gaze theory so much is that Elsa Bloodstone is actually, she has more boobs than I do. And I always feel awkward mentioning that. And Zach's even mentioned how a lot of people don't like him talking about, women having boobs in his reviews. But the point he's trying to get at is there's this weird, arbitrary rule at Marvel, at least there seems to be, which says that women, if they're drawn at all, they must have their feminine characteristics de-emphasized to the point of it being ridiculous. So the girls all look like boys, the boys all look like girls. And here in the middle of this comic, Elsa actually looks like a girl. And it makes sense if you're going to court fans of teenage manga about robots and, heroic young men and beautiful women, that you would actually have some of the conventions that those teenage boys like. You can't, there's no way that feminism can win and stop teenage boys from liking beautiful women. And if you like comics, you can either try to force comics to be progressive and to conform to a feminist theory of male gaze theory, or you can just accept that they're going to have some goofy, immature stuff in them and love them in spite of that kind of stuff rather than because of that stuff. So for a teenage boy, the pretty woman is the reason to read the comic, probably, or at least a significant reason they read the comic. For a mature person, who has real friends, you don't just sit in your room all day reading comic books, then I don't know, you can enjoy the campiness of that on one level. You might just kind of roll your eyes at some of the fan service stuff and say, whatever, I'm invested in the characters, but it's not like some evil, immoral thing that needs to be ripped out of the comic book. But for academic feminism, there's something sinister about the idea of beauty. And I think that's what's creeped its way into our comic book discussion, and that's what I need to talk about more in its own series. Tightly focused on feminism, so I don't go riding off into the tangent sunset when I'm talking about this giant monster comic book. Heads. Get George Bridgman's Guide to Human Anatomy. 1 head, 2 head. All right. The nipple mostly for men, but also for women, should rest at about 2 heads high, and hers is significantly lower than that. So she's gained some extra spine here. She's got a few more. What do you call the parts of the spine? I don't know. But she's got a few more of those than the average person does, and she's stretched a little bit that way. And then another kind of weird face. Oh, I dug that they're tying this in with the Venomverse event. I love that whole event. It looks like they're building to something even bigger. These are a couple of the worst faces, though. The his eyes and mouth are looking straight up, but his skull is looking forward. So this would probably be the best one for me to redline and, point out how the axis of the face needs to move down. I might do that anyway, just for fun, but I won't draw on the comic book itself because I respect the effort of the comic book and I respect what the comic book's trying to do and trying to be. It's a fun, giant monster story, and it gave me a fun, giant monster story. All right. Oh, boy. And then the real Fin Fang Foom comes out to battle the alternate version of the Fin Fang Foom. I dig this. I love giant monsters beating each other up because I enjoy comics which celebrate the youthful, imaginative energy of these kind of stories. And this is doing that. So I get to go pick up 1 through 6, and I'm going to follow it. I guess the only thing I'd throw shade on is this is a new character, Kid Kaiju, right? And they're billing this Monsters Unleashed like it's some weird event. I had no idea that this was a new hero with, his own power, and he's interesting. He's kind of behind the 8 ball. He has some self-doubt about his ability to be a hero and the nature of his power, and he's trying to find, heroic qualities within himself. So this is a good hero, just starting out his career, just starting to get the feel for his powers, kind of a story. Some roast-worthy moments for the art, but man, all the money and energy was put into the monsters hitting each other. So no complaints there. I'm #1 Marmaduke fan. I'm going to go ahead and upload my 10-minute tangent on feminism just so you can see how insane that was. But I guess the point of that tangent was I think I'm going to talk a bit more about male gaze theory in art history and how that's distinct from male gaze theory as defined by Anita Sarkeesian or as defined by the Hawkeye Initiative, because I think that's a really important distinction that we need to get if we're going to understand where the heck